And I've already told you what a pleasure and an honor it is to be here. And of course I jumped at the chance. And when I started to think about, well, what is it that I should share with you? I called Professor Chatterjee and said, what do you think the audience would be interested in? So we traded some thoughts, and then finally I decided that one of the things that jumps out about you folks is that you are at the threshold of starting a very important journey in life. I mean, you're already on your life journey, but you're about to launch on your professional journey. And is there anything that I can share from my own journey, which is not at the end, but certainly more advanced than yours, that would be of interest and possible, could provoke some thoughts? So I thought, okay, I'm going to use the metaphor of the journey as something we will discuss. So I'm going to talk about what aspiration you might have for the journey and the context in which to do it. What are going to be some of the essentials and guiding principles of this journey that could be, and how do you equip yourself for it? And I should stay right to the front that I'm not offering these as answers. The answers have to come from within you, but what people say sometimes offer interesting points of departure for your own thinking, so I'll offer it in that spirit, okay? But before I start, and this is an amazing coincidence, I thought I would start with a story, and you'll see why I'm saying what an amazing coincidence. I was speaking to a friend yesterday, an architect, and my architect friend was telling me a story about this king, wise king, who said to his crown prince, said, "Son, I would like you to go spend 24 hours in the forest and come back and tell me what you heard." So the son, the crown prince, went away, came back, and the father asked, "So what did you hear?" And he said, "Well, I heard scary sounds and a lot of sounds. I heard the roar of the tiger, the trumpeting of the elephant," and he described all the sounds that he had heard. And the king said, "Son, you still need to develop further. Now go back, listen more closely, and then come back and tell me what you heard." So the son came back second time, and when the king asked, he said, "Well, I was listening and I heard the rustling in the leaves, and describes all sorts of things that he had heard." And the king said, "Son, you still are not ready. Go back and listen more closely." So third time when he came back, he said, "What did you hear?" And he said, "It was very silent. And during the 24 hours, I also heard the rays of the sun touch the ground. I heard the dew forming on the leaves." And the son said, "Now you're ready." And he appointed him his successor and king. So the point of it is that listening is more than just hearing words. In your journey, I think it would be very important to cultivate the habit and the ability to both listen deeply and to reflect. And listening deeply means you are looking for the nuances, you're looking for the meanings, you're looking not just for the broad strokes, but the coloration, and you're going beyond that to what is in the person's mind, why are they coming into it. It's an endless journey. And if you learn to listen deeply and closely, and then apply reflection as also a habit in life, I think you'll find it very useful. So now returning to the journey part, I'll essentially give you three sets of my observations. And let's start with setting the aspiration. And I think in setting the aspiration and the goal for your journey, I think it would be very important to do it with a sense of excitement about the possibilities and the future. And particularly at this point in time where you folks are in India, and I'll talk about the context of India, but frankly, that style of thinking applies to anybody, anywhere in the world, who's looking at the future ahead where the headlights are pointing. And yes, it's important to look in the rear view mirror occasionally and periodically, but essentially your attention should be focused on what the possibilities are for the future. And in India, and in general, to be excited by a set of possibilities, point one, I think that is very instructive and insight creating to look at it through a demographic lens. There's something happening in India that's absolutely exceptional. Almost 1.2 billion people in India, slightly less than in China, but India at the same time is also the youngest population in the world. Median age of approximately 24 years. So 600 million people below the age of 24, younger than you. Not projected to be born, but already born, feet on the ground. And number two, 1/3 of these people are below the age of 15. So about 400 million people below the age of 14. And therefore, India, the India of the future, this is going to be a new emergent India, is a phenomenon of youthfulness. It will also provide the engine for the economy, for the evolution of the country in every aspect, as well as it will provide a platform for the launch of the new India. I think the opportunity is that significant and that profound. Second, while there are these huge possibilities and exciting possibilities, they are possibilities, not entitlements or guarantees. So there are risks associated with it, and I think for people who are in this room going out, it would be important for you to understand and see whether you realize it or not, both in big things as well as little things that you do or not do. Not doing is also making a choice. Not deciding is also a decision. And I think, therefore, that as you look at this and think about it, you have to also discover yourself and say, what are the areas where you're going to engage? Now, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to abandon your professional careers, but you are operating in an ecosystem and a complex world where you touch many things. So you have to say, what are the areas where I want to particularly care about? And these can change with time. So this is about the possibilities. So recognize that you have the choice of setting aspirations, thinking big and saying, that's what my journey destination is going to be. Now, you can change journey. You will find it always your destination. It always happens. But at least have that orientation. So the second is, as you embark on this journey, what is going to be important? And I would offer to you that the one constant in this that will serve you well, that you ought to make a commitment to, is an attitude of innovation. And with that, it really gets to, so what is innovation and why? And I'll share some thoughts on that as well. So it's really I think the thing that best expresses the idea of innovation as I mean it is the concept of head in the clouds, feet on the ground. Innovation is that space where imagination meets reality. It's not just thinking wild thoughts, but thinking big thoughts with a sense of possibilities, with a sense of newness, but eventually converting to a reality. Because really innovation is a purposeful, systematic, sometimes inspired search for new and better solutions to, within quotes, problems. And I think that when you look at problems, you always have to be asking, so what is the innovation I can bring, whether it's based on ideas, whether it's based on business models, social models, or importantly, based on technology as an enabler of new ways of thinking or of new models and paradigms. And when you do that, you have to then say, how can you yourself and by mobilizing other people convert those solutions to reality? And in the reality of India, these big solutions are relevant if they pass one test, and that of scaling. And this is particularly in the context of some particular issues that I will talk about. If they don't scale into the reality of India, they don't qualify as big solutions for India. Although I don't think that it will be only big bang solutions, it has to be many competing solutions that have to withstand the test of the reality of the landscape. Now, it is really the way, but the other thing about innovation is the ability and the need to think out of the box, look at the same thing in new ways. And by carefully understanding constraints and limitations that have prevented people from doing it before and consciously saying, what if? It is the power of what if and why not. And you have to do it with a sense of empowerment and confidence to say, yes, indeed, because it does require confidence, because this means stepping out more into the unknown, out of your comfort zone. And what if? Because then you have to be action-oriented. If it's only a thought, it's interesting, but it must issue out in action for it to have an impact. And the last thing about innovation is that it does require nurturing. Innovation is not simply just sitting and dreaming. It actually is a state of mind. It has to be nurtured. And it's a powerful but vulnerable state of mind. It can be shut down easily. It does not react well to authoritarianism. It is an incredibly democratic process because good ideas, new ways of thinking can come from anyone. So smart innovators learn early to create interdisciplinary points of view and learn to live with in environments and create environments where they are getting different people from different perspectives and experiences to contribute and think. That's why diversity is important, not because it is simply something that is required. It's the power of bringing together different perspectives on the same issue, same challenge, same problem. And therefore, I like to think of it as innovation is fundamentally a power of, it's a phenomenon of the crossroads, where innovation doesn't prosper if you are sitting in a quiet room insulated from all others. It prospers when you're sitting at a crossroads where there's traffic in ideas, where there's traffic in experiences, and using that as a platform and enabler and catalyst to stimulate new thinking. So I would urge that cultivate and train yourself to think like this and let that infection spread to people. The third thing is, therefore, then what is the preparation you need to be effective in a journey of this nature? And I would start by saying it starts by adopting the attitude of discovery and the attitude of an explorer, because life is an exploration. Is there any sense any of you have that you're going to program the trajectory of your life in a predictable way, and your trajectory of your career in a way that you believe is close to reality? Forget it. I think you should work toward goals, you should work toward directions, because I think life is not that predictable, and you cannot finally set the trajectory. You can set a direction, and then cultivate an attitude of discovery and the excitement that comes from it, and go forth with confidence that way. And I'm reminded that perhaps the best way to prepare yourself and equip yourself for the long haul, not just for how you do something in a bank or in a manufacturing company, but for the long haul, is really learn to how you will stay on a continuing journey to improve yourself, to strengthen yourself, to expand your mind. There's a quote that I love. It is attributed to a Robert Thomas Dewar. Yeah, same Dewar, whose name also appears in the brand of a popular spirit. But the quote is this: minds are like parachutes. They function only when they are open. And if there's a essence and a reality to who we are as human beings. We are a reflection beyond our body, of our ideas, of our mind, of our intellect, and therefore the potential is in what you do with it. And nobody else is responsible for what you do with your mind. Only you can be. So you have to take ownership for your growth, both the heart and the mind, the rational mind and the emotional part of you. And you have to learn to be in a constant state of learning dynamically, because you are not static. The moment you go static, it's approaching that end state which is referred to as rigor mortis. I mean, eventually it comes, but it's a good idea to defer it for a while. So you will change, but you can guide how you change, you can shape how you change and in what direction, and the world around you will change. So you have to also be prepared and equip yourself to operate in a dynamic world. And that means always be questioning, asking, reflecting, thinking, and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, whether it's in attitudes or whether it is in the work you do, because this attitude will infuse your entire being in your environment. And think even in practical terms of this, and I'm not talking just of your professional skills and competencies, although it applies to that as well. The half-life of useful knowledge is about 5 to 7 years. And if that's the case, during your productive career, which I would imagine is at least 50, 60, 70 years, through which you will be impactful, you will have to re-equip and retool yourself many times. And nobody is going to come to you and say, please, start relearning. You have to be in a constant state. So in terms of your experience out here at IIM, of course what you learn in terms of techniques, methods, etc. is important, and you should do it well. You should be good at what you do, because if you're not good at what you do, you will not be credible. But equally important is learning how to learn. It will serve you well. So that's how you really train yourself. So, and in this, I'm just about to end now. It would be very important in all of this with this sense of discovery, to always be in a process of learning and asking, get a sense for who you are. What's your core? What's your values? What's that internal compass that you can rely on? And you won't get the answer in a flash. It will take time. But be engaged in that, because in this journey, like in any exploratory journey, it's not always smooth sailing. There are ups and that you celebrate, and there are certainly downs where you may despair. And certainly I can say happily that I've had moments of celebration in my life, in my career, but also dark days when, it led to some deep questioning. But in those moments, when you are unsure, when things aren't going in a way that you would be celebrating, when people are questioning you, or when people who supported you are not readily there, what will sustain you? I think it is this core of who you are, what's important to you, and it makes sense, because ultimately wisdom will come when you realize that you're not trying to lead your life or do your journey to make somebody else, to satisfy somebody else. Really, you are your own person that you are responsible to, and therefore you have to get used to the idea of being comfortable with that person, knowledgeable of that person that you look at every day in the mirror. Because your sense of, are you satisfied with what you are doing, are you true to yourself, essentially has to come out of a conversation every morning when you look into the mirror and say, am I measuring up to the standards of that person? So let me end here, but before I end, I will also give you a mantra for carrying with you on this life. Again, it's not something you have to accept, but use it as a point of departure. I call it the Panch Tattva. Actually, I call it the Panch Tattva 2.0 to differentiate it from the original Panch Tattva, but it's my distillation, and it starts with 5 things. It used to be 4, but I made it 5 because it becomes easier to remember, Panch Tattva. So it starts with sapne. dreams, the importance of dreams. A professor of mine, influential, who actually lives in Quilon near Thiruvananthapuram, he used to tell me it's important to dream dreams, and I see the wisdom of it, because that provides the motivation, the sense of possibilities, and the power to be working towards something that's exciting, that's energizing, that's empowering. So, like in everything else with that concept of ownership, nobody else is responsible but you. So you must learn to nurture your dreams. That's one, sapne. Two is himmat, courage, strength. You will need it, because converting dreams to reality is not easy. Life can be fun, energizing, fulfilling, but it's not necessarily easy, which is not bad, it's okay, but you just need to see what it takes. So you need himmat, because as you persist, go through, you should have the resolves and the stores of courage that will help you go attain the dreams that you have set your sights on, the aspiration. Third is tapas. Tapas is from tapasya, the perseverance, going through hardship, going through the rigor to really do well what you have set out your heart on doing. And tapas and himmat are related, but they are different. Himmat is courage, tapas is actually the preparation and the commitment to the rigorous experience. Fourth is hamdardi. Hamdardi is empathy, a sense of connection. And that's important because you do realize that very little happens by yourself. And if we are part of this ecosystem, this huge power in understanding is consistent with what I started with about listening and reflection. And therefore, but there's also huge power that comes when you understand and when you carry people along. And when that sense of commitment comes, not just in a technical sense, understanding, but really being in touch with their emotions and recognizing and realizing that everyone around you also carries a dream, a sapna. And last of all is iman. Iman is not imandari. Iman is iman, integrity. And it's fundamental. It is that discovering yourself, what's important to you, and the conversation you need to have every day with the person who's looking at you in that mirror. So, Panch Tattva, Sapne, Himmat, Tapas, Hamdardi, and Iman. My friends, thank you very much.